We are now on the precipice of entering the 2025 patch, and gone are the days of lumbering builds with low mobility and limited ball skills. This has been replaced by a meta focusing around blistering long-range attacks, as well as defenses that require ever-increasing mobility in order to keep up. Yet somehow, despite their limited ranged and mobility stats, power forwards are still a vital component of almost every elite party comp. So today, we're going to review how specific builds carve out a niche in the meta, and where they belong on the power forward tier list. But before we get into individual builds, let's focus on power forwards as a whole, as well as their stats and class abilities. Power forwards focus the majority of their base stats into melee damage and defense, allowing them to be effective frontline fighters, as well as solid complementary help side defenders. Their class abilities, Inner Focus and Quick Draw, synergize well with their base stats to supercharge their role within their party. Inner Focus is a melee damage ability, which boosts power forwards' attack when being contested at the rim. This allows them to practically ignore smaller defenders during their melee attacks, and even gives them the ability to inflict damage over the larger center classes found in the league. Quick Draw, on the other hand, is an interesting defensive perk which grants increased mobility on the first defensive rotation of each possession, making power forwards some of the better help defenders in the league. Alright, now that we have our bases covered, let's move on to the tier list. Starting in F tier, we have Jonathan Isaac. Looking at his stats, we can see where Jonathan Isaac's F-tier ranking is coming from. He has one of the lowest offensive stats in the game, as well as a rock-bottom durability stat to boot. And while his defensive and physical stats are promising, Isaac is unfortunately an absolute detriment to your party on the offensive end, regardless of whether he's in the melee or ranged slot in your party. We can see that he struggles to finish the opportunities his carries provide him with, and consistently settles for inefficient floaters despite his size. And when you place him into a range slot, he's basically an absent party member. He only averaged 2 long-range attacks per game, and dealt basically no damage the entire patch from the position, shooting an abysmal 26%. However, it shouldn't be said that Isaac has no upside, as we previously mentioned his solid defensive ability. He provides a good deterrent around the rim, and with the boosted mobility from Quick Draw, he can pull off some absolutely incredible blocks to protect your basket from damage. All in all, you shouldn't look to Isaac to make any significant contribution if you field an elite level party. But if you happen to be forming a fresh party, or looking for a temporary replacement for a patch, he might be a cheap option to hold you over. Moving up to D tier, we have 2 builds that you would love to have coming off your bench, but probably shouldn't be in your main party, and that's Santi Aldama and Tari Eason. Starting with Aldama, we can see he couples decent defensive stats with a great range attack, where he shot 37% from 3-point range last patch. This lends itself perfectly to the current meta, which prioritizes larger builds that can space the floor, providing vital offensive firepower to otherwise limited builds. This isn't to say that Aldama has no other ways of inflicting damage, as he uses a cheeky right-handed floater to consistently inflict melee damage on the opposing party. He's surprisingly effective with the move, and his sweeping attacks often catch defending parties off guard. Now, he wouldn't be a D-tier build without some drawbacks. His mobility leaves a bit to be desired, and he shows difficulty keeping up with the majority of quicker builds in the game, although his long reach does allow him to steal the ball from opposing parties fairly often. Additionally, he has limited ability to create his own shot, which limits his roles in parties without higher tier offensive playmakers. Our next build in D tier is Tari Eason. His build focuses around his high-level defense, with decent offensive stats, but is unfortunately held back by his limited durability. When Eason is in your party, you should focus on leveraging his high-level individual defense to shut down opposing parties' carries. He has enough strength to hold up to most builds in the post position, and can reliably deny them efficient shots. He also has the mobility to keep up with many of the faster builds in the game, and can consistently deny their melee damage. And when he's away from the action, Eason utilizes Quick Draw to make an impact with timely blocks, as well as lightning quick steals. On the offensive end, Eason is significantly more limited, but can inflict enough damage in both melee and ranged territories to make enemy parties respect his game. Ultimately, Eason will be entering only his 4th patch of his career, and with increased durability and a few offensive buffs, could make significant strides into the higher tiers. Moving on to C tier, we have 2 builds that are solid starters that can contribute to elite level parties, Harrison Barnes and John Collins. Starting with Harrison Barnes, we have a build that shows some of the highest durability in the league, with solid stats across the board to form a well-rounded party member. And while there may be very little that is exceptional about the Barnes build, the best ability is often availability. Simply put, adding Barnes to your party gives you a very solid starter in every game in the patch, limiting the anxiety of having to slot in party members with low stats, or having to play them outside their natural roles. When he's on the court, Barnes gives solid ranged attacks that hover in the high 30s, and even touches into the elite territory of 40%. He also sports a fairly intelligent build by limiting his shots to open looks, which means your party can focus on feeding your more efficient carries to drive your offense. Our other build in C tier is John Collins. He provides a solid mirror to Barnes, with an above-average range stat that helps his party space the floor on the offensive end. However, it should be noted that he also provides a variety of other skills to his party. he has shown the ability to be a solid contributor as the rollman, with the ability to finish around larger, slower builds, as well as assert his authority over smaller builds in the league. He can even pull off the occasional isolation play, allowing your carries to recover their fatigue while maintaining efficient offense. Additionally, he has the ability to catch enemies off guard and bully his way to efficient open shots more often than you'd expect. Basically, John Collins has everything you could want from the power forward position, without being exceptional in any one category. In the B tier, we find a trio of builds filling out the above-average starters: Draymond Green, Aaron Gordon, and Zion Williamson. Starting with Draymond Green, we can find a build revolving around insanely high defensive and intelligence stats, while his unique ability, Prankster, gives him the ability to draw fouls on both the offensive and defensive end. Draymond has shown his ability to be an insanely valuable piece on elite-level parties, where he was the defensive backbone of the Warrior party's full championship runs starting in the 2015 patch. His build is actually fairly unique, as he opted not to utilize overwhelming physical stats, like most tank builds, and instead opted to spec into the intelligence tree. This decision hypercharged his ability to proc Quick Draw, which he uses to swarm opposing teams and smother their carries, as well as cut off passing lanes to shut down plays before they can begin. Offensively, he has basically zero ability to inflict damage on an individual level. However, his high intelligence stat comes to save the day yet again. His duo game with Curry is legendary, and he consistently uses Curry's shooting and gravity to inflict heavy damage on the opposing team. Outside of his stats, he also is one of the best users of Prankster in the entire league, and is consistently able to draw fouls on opposing players, and tilt them hard enough to make them throw the game. However, you always have to be cautious to not let Draymond take his antics too far, as some of his actions have gotten him temporary bans by the mods. And while Prankster is an incredibly effective ability, prior patches have shown that it has limited efficacy against higher intelligence players. Moving on to Aaron Gordon, we have a more traditional build that leverages high physical stats into solid offensive and defensive play. This build archetype enables him to punish opposing parties with insane melee attacks, imposing his will on opponents with crushing dunks on offense, as well as high-flying blocks on the defensive end. He provided an incredible off-carry for his S-tier teammate Nikola Jokic, and punished switching defenses with solid melee damage, while still providing enough range damage that he's unable to be ignored by opposing parties. However, Gordon isn't necessarily a high-level offensive player, and many have questioned how effective he would be without the opportunities provided to him by Jokic. Regardless of this drawback though, he's clearly a strong enough player to be an asset to any party in the game. We finish with Zion Williamson, who clearly has the highest peak potential of the group. Unfortunately, he's held back by his abysmally low durability stat. He frequently plays less than 30 games a patch, and was even AFK for the entire 2021 patch. But when he does play, it's fairly obvious that he could be one of the top builds in the game. He absolutely bludgeons enemy parties with a combination of size and speed not seen anywhere else in the league. He's also made strides in his playmaking abilities, and has worked to improve setting up his lower tier teammates to boost morale. And we haven't had a chance to talk about his unique ability, Sturdy, which decreases his damage taken on drives. Now, there's been a ton of discussion around Zion's choice to opt into this skill, with the majority of players suggesting he should opt away from the heavy build in favor of a more rogue-style class. And personally, I feel like they're right. Sturdy makes Zion an absolute juggernaut on his drives, but unfortunately, his build really isn't limited by his melee damage, but rather his ability to stay on the court. I definitely suggest he opt into the hustle ability instead, which I hope he works towards unlocking in the upcoming patches. In the A tier, we find all-star level players that are able to be one of the primary carries on championship level parties, with Evan Mobley and Pascal Siakam. Starting with Evan Mobley, we have what is essentially a perfect traditional power forward, who uses his two abilities, long reach and quick draw, to smother opponents' attacks on the defensive end. And if you want to see a build that has perfected the use of quick draw, then look no further. Mobley is an absolute menace when providing help defense, and is possibly the best in the league at rotating in to deny enemy damage. And if he's already positioned near the basket, you can basically expect a complete lockdown of any melee attackers. His defense is even more broken due to long reach, which extends his effective block and steal radius, allowing him to secure blocks against even the tallest range-style attack builds. This allows him to easily transition into raid-style attacks, where he can inflict massive damage to the enemy team. Offensively, he's an incredibly efficient melee scorer, and finishes around the rim with more agility than you'd expect. He can finish as both a roll man, as well as create his own shot off the dribble. His only real drawback is his limited usage, as well as his mediocre long-range attack. Finishing up the A tier, we have Pascal Siakam, who has a build that is perfectly suited to be the off-carry on championship-level parties. He boasts high melee damage, along with practically zero true weaknesses to his game. His unique ability, Rapid Spin, gives him increased damage in all spin-based attacks. and when coupled with inner focus, makes him an absolutely deadly threat around the rim. He can also slot into almost any party comp in the game with a reasonable ranged attack, as well as solid but not overwhelming defense. His only major drawback is that none of his abilities scale into the truly elite category, which holds him back from being the primary carry for your party. But if you're looking for an off-carry threat, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better option than Siakam. Giannis Antetokounmpo, possibly one of the best melee carries in the history of the game. He has the perfect combination of mobility, melee damage, and unique abilities to absolutely dominate the game, and has consistently proven that he can be the carry for championship-level parties. His gameplay has been at the front and center of the meta for multiple patches now, so here's a quick summary of his 3-step strategy, as well as some counterplay to keep in mind. Step 1 is triggering Anger Point, which increases his melee accuracy after taking damage. He uses this to consistently bully his way to the rim, where he implements Step 2, accumulating Moxie stats. This is where Giannis looks for opportunities to dunk the ball, which triggers stat buffs from his Moxie ability. If he manages to get a few stacks, he moves on to Step 3, which is to absolutely destroy the enemy party with melee attacks. Even when your party sees him coming, Giannis is simply unstoppable when buffed with multiple Moxie stacks, and you should probably consider forfeiting to save your party members further psychological damage. As with the other Moxie builds we covered in previous videos, you absolutely must keep Giannis from triggering his buffs, even if it requires forming a living wall to body block him from the hoop. So yeah, if you have Giannis in your party, don't overcomplicate your strategy, and just enjoy as his Berserker-style build puts in work against your opposition. And that's our tier list. Check out some of my other videos for more positional breakdowns, and please consider liking and subscribing to support the channel.